Hello, everyone. Elaysha here with Life's a Faire, and I'm sitting down today with the team that is part of a really historic moment within the Renaissance Festival world. I'm here with entertainment director of the Oregon Renaissance Fair, Krystal Bly, and two of perhaps most interesting people on the circuit right now.
Not gonna lie. Absolutely. So over here we have Graham Luker, and he is playing our King James VI of Scotland and First of England, the Uniter of Great Britain. And over here we have Cole Parker, who is playing the Duke of Buckingham, the King's favorite and gentleman of the bedchamber. And we're really thrilled to be here with you today.
Thank you guys so much for sitting down with me, and let's go ahead and just get into it. We have, for Pride Month, the first historically accurate portrayal of King James in the Renaissance Festival circuit. And Krystal, this one's a really big one for you. What came first, the actor or the role?
Definitely the role. So
Okay.
I'm a huge history nerd. And I think we all have our dream festival that we build in our head, right? And I literally added this to my list of like, boy, that would be cool last year. So I was performing at the Oregon Renaissance Fair and I was like, it's Pride Month. I don't see a single Pride flag. I don't see anything going on at this festival. And Rose City Pride is enormous. That's the Portland Pride. And we are only about a half hour, 45 minutes outside of Portland, right? So I'm going, what is going on? This is weird to me. And it's like, if I were ever in charge of a festival, I would, you know what I would do? I would, especially if we were running in June, I'd have a queer monarch. I would make that happen. And then
It's almost like you manifested this.
all it is. So 6 months later, they called me up and they're like, "Hey, RED quit. You want to come be the entertainment director? We understand you have a very shiny resume." So I sent them my resume, and here I am. And then I started the hunt for my gay king, my queer king, and I actually found several amazing candidates along the way. But I think we settled on the right one in the end. So was recommended by several other fantastic humans on circuit, interviewed Graham, and then Graham brought Cole in, and we have a fantastic team.
I mean, clearly you guys have a chemistry already. I just in talking with you all, the happiness that I'm seeing from all of you. But so okay, for Graham and Cole, really what made this the right role for you guys?
So for me, it was when Krystal had called and was like, "Hey, so I have this thing, and you know, we're trying to play King James," and I was like, "Excellent, sounds great." And I have a cursory knowledge of a good bit of Renaissance history already. I took an AP Euro class in high school, so like I had a good bit, and then I've also worked at the Pennsylvania Renaissance Fair for. I'm going into my fifth season in 7 years. So like I already had a good cursory knowledge. So I knew that he was in some aspects queer. But when Krystal said that they really wanted to do a love story, a queer love story, I from right then on I was in. Because as a queer person myself, like Renaissance fairs are incredibly queer already. Like especially like the young people who come to fairs are extremely open, extremely enjoyable to be around. And I have always wanted that to be shown more. So like you can't do it any more than like making your monarch gay. So I was in from the second that's what she said. I was like, excellent, let's do it. And then I brought Cole in because Krystal had asked if I knew anyone who I would want to play the Duke of Buckingham, his lover. And uh, playing lovers in like a stage play different. You like, if you're in Romeo and Juliet and you're playing Juliet and you don't like your Romeo, like you say the lines on the page and you get over it. But like because of the such live in it improvisational nature of a Ren Fair, it was really important to me that I actually enjoy the presence of the person also playing my lover.
That is part of why I asked you, right? Because you really can't in this environment just stick together two people and be like, hi, I've had to do that myself, right? When I was friends with him, I got stuck with this guy that I did not get along with, and we had lots of love scenes and we did not like each other at all. So it was really important to me, having come from an acting background myself, that I ask that you have somebody, are you comfortable with this person, working with this person? Do you have an established relationship?
And so I tagged Cole because they're honestly one of the funniest people I know. I already get along with them excellently. And I you know, really enjoy his work. So I was like, would you come do this with me? So,
and for me, it was threefold. The first one was obviously the queer representation and this interpretation of these characters in front of an interactive audience, and being able to make those characters down to earth and be able to actually have people in and around and be able to experience them, and we get to give something back to them, which is important. The second one was George Villiers is a fascinating guy, specifically about this role, and there are so many different multitudes that he contained, especially in like the nicer parts of his life, and also the ones that were a bit more difficult, like how penniless he was growing up. But when I first talked to Krystal and I realized, the preparation of this role is being taken, the first thing that she said was, we're not casting caricatures, we're casting humans, and that was the production. And so every step along the way of, she was like, while you're playing queer characters, remember, these are masculine men informed by the circumstances that they came from, and they have pride in what they are, which is why our opening gate scene is it's both an invitation to the audience to welcome to our world, and also, especially for James and George, a bit of a protest in and of itself of, we are in love, we are here, we are public about it, and we are incredibly proud of it. And the third reason kind of peels back the curtain a little bit, in that actors unfortunately don't just teleport from job to job, and there is a big amount of risk in moving to a new area and starting something new, especially with a company you haven't worked for before. So when
this is the first time we've ever been to Oregon.
Yeah,
so we've never been here before.
And so when Graham explained to me the significance to him of the role, and he asked me to come and do this with him, and I thought that it was a great opportunity to support a friend that I've had for years, and be able to come out and make sure that he's not alone, make sure that no matter what this fair was going to be, that it was at least pleasant for the two of us. And luckily, we couldn't have asked for a better fair to be part of, a more inclusive community, a supportive, a creative structure. So everything has just worked out very well.
Yeah.
We do actually have a fantastic team. So the producers have been very supportive of this. It wasn't even a question for them. When I first suggested this, when I was first hired, they were like, yeah, that's fine. Whatever you want to do, go for it.
They were like, support is huge.
A successful show? Sure, go ahead and do it. And I was like, okay, let's go, right? And I don't know if they fully comprehended how historic this was going to be. Just for them, it was just, okay, yeah, do the thing. We trust you. Go for it. But they have really been incredibly supportive through this entire process, and they work really, really hard themselves. So I really have to thank David, Tracy, and Nina, who is our board and our production team. And then, of course, my management team as well. I threw together the best bunch of Rennies that I could find, honestly, from all over the country. And they met when they got here, right? And the Oregon community really has been so welcoming. I mean, it helped that I'd been a performer at this festival for 3 years previously, but it's been really great to work with an incredibly supportive crew and production team. So, you know, we have a wonderful structure, and we're really thrilled to be working with them.
Well, I will say the best part about the Renaissance Festival community is wherever you go, even if you have no one there, at least you have someone to fall back on. But speaking of communities, I mean, you hinted that the community's been really good. The fair itself has been really good. How about just like, in general, you're obviously, every Renaissance Festival is at least partially part of another community. You said you guys are very close to a major pride event in Oregon. How has the local community been accepting of you, or guys, if they have been accepting?
Well, for the most part, they have been accepting. But I have to say, we've started very small.
Mhm.
It's been, all right, let's just put this out there and see how people respond. We didn't have like a big PR event. We didn't have a big press release. We didn't have a big announcement. And the first time anybody heard anything about this was when we went on the news the Friday before we opened, the Thursday before we opened, pardon me, on Hello Rose City on the early morning news. And we said, hey, we have a queer king. And
Mhm.
I think that was a little bit of like, just like the reaction was first day at opening gate, there was a, did we hear what we just heard?
Mhm.
And then it was a, we did hear that. And then it was a, yes, we heard that.
Yeah.
Right.
When we were doing the opening scene the first day, where my entourage comes out as King James, and they're in front of all the patrons, just holding Cole's hand and saying that, he was my beloved and my heart's dearest. There was a sense of disbelief in the audience that I could sense and kind of feel, some gasping, and then actual like literal tears that were happening. Like people cried. It was like, and we knew that it was gonna have an effect. But even like seeing it happen live, even as a performer, you are at least auxiliary aware of the audience. Watching that in real time was also really special. But the just the people who are come have been nothing but kind. I think like overwhelmingly, support from patronage has been excellent. People are very excited about it. It's really special walking around in like, I don't like to sit as the king. I like to walk. I don't like to sit down. So I'll like, take my entourage and we'll go around and walk and be seen. And if I'm with Cole, they're with me, and we'll hold hands and we'll walk. And you'll see just like unabashed queer joy from some of the patronage. It doesn't matter if they're like, gay or trans or whatever, just like anyone being able to see us and people are looking at us and we are being queer brings them joy, which is really the whole reason that anyone should be doing anything here. Just like, like Ren fairs are such an interesting platform of performance, right? Because it is kind of, we said before, between the us, it is very vaudevillian. You've got acts that don't really see the light of day, unless they're at a fair, right? It's not like it's like the end all be all of theatrical performance, like I've never seen a sword swallower anywhere but a Ren fair, and that's
Thank God.
sick as hell. It's sick as hell. But the reason we do this is to bring someone joy.
Yeah.
If we bring a single person an ounce of happiness, especially in like the world that we live in now, I call that a good job. And like that made my performance career worth it. If I make one child smile, like it was all worth it. And I think we've done just leaps and bounds more than that.
And I have to say, I'm so glad you brought up the kids, because one of my favorite things to watch as the entertainment director is the kids who they just accept it, right? We're not, the kids don't go, oh, what's different about this king? They're just, he's the king and this is the king's boyfriend. Cool.
Yeah.
Right. And they just accept it and they roll with it and they love it, and seeing the magic and delight. And of course, your interaction with the kids. Fantastic.
I love interacting with kids because they're the ones who believe it the most. Like adults have like the suspension of disbelief, like, yeah, this is the king, and they will like kind of like cheekily bow to you or whatever. But like kids, like they believe it. They believe that you are the king. And that really makes it really special. So I definitely gravitate towards them in like any instance. If I'm like given the choice between talking to this adult over here or this, girl who has a princess fairy wing crown on, like I'm going to the kid every time, because that we're not only giving them joy, but also like creating lifelong memories for them. And they're gonna grow up and remember when I dressed as a fairy and got my picture taken with the king? Like, wasn't that such a great time? So that makes it worth it for me.
Yeah.
So just in the interest of getting through some of the really important points here. Obviously, we've got so much joy, but have you guys seen much as far as detractors? There is anytime you take a step forward, there's always someone trying to hold you back. So, how do you guys handle that? How, as management staff, as actors, y'all have a unique situation that you have to deal with.
So I do want to say that this festival is somewhat unique from many of the other festivals that I've worked at, in that we have a zero tolerance policy for hate symbols and hate speech. That's one of the reasons that I felt comfortable going forward with this plan, because I have worked at other festivals where people show up in swastikas, or they show up in Confederate flag sweatshirts or what have you, and management goes, you can't kick them out unless they do something bad. And this festival does not tolerate that nonsense, right? So the Oregon Renaissance Fair and the Washington Midsummer Renaissance Fair are both owned by the same people, and I have seen it when people show up or and do or say things that are hate speech, out they go immediately, right? So that makes me feel much safer as a queer person myself, right? I feel a lot more like I have the ability to be creative and play, and that I have a safe environment to do that in. So that's thing number one. Thing number two, we absolutely have had some hate comments, and it's been
So here's what I think I can say about it, and then I
Yeah.
think Cole has probably something also to share with it. But I have not experienced any amount of pushback in person on the fairgrounds, because when because those people are cowards, right? So when
Yeah.
the overwhelming majority of the people in a space are positive and accepting and loving and joyful, those people are afraid. They should be. Those people are afraid to speak up, to say the awful, terrible thing they are thinking, because they're cowards. And we outnumber them. And then the hate comments we do get online, which are few at the moment, there might be a point where it gets to be more. Those people are also cowards. They are hiding behind keyboards, and they can say whatever they want. And Krystal is laughing at me because I have been quoted as saying, I love hate comments directed at me. I thrive off of them, because you can't hurt me. You know what I mean? Like, I have extremely thick skin as a queer person. You're not saying anything to me I haven't said to myself in the mirror when I was a small child.
Now you're gonna make me cry.
You can't hurt me, and I refuse to give you that power. And by you not being able to hurt me, you're not able to hurt others. So that's what I'll say about it. I think they're cowards. And yeah, I laugh at their general direction at this point. So
And I think what makes it a lot easier to grapple with is in the terms of actually interacting with the audience. We haven't experienced a whole lot of outwards of that. Normally it'll end at, Your Majesty, where is your queen? And Graham has a very confident way of saying, the queen is back in London. I am here with my favorite, the Duke of Buckingham. And that typically, if that wants to end the conversation for them, then they'll go and get their turkey leg. And normally that will invite them to ask questions and be curious about it, and actually get to learn about our characters and about our history. And I think that's been really helpful when it comes to commenters online, is that the majority of them weren't planning on coming to this fair anyway. They just saw that the post is being shared widely and they wanted to comment on it. And Krystal is very good at not only replying to them quickly and concisely, but by also bringing it back to the objective facts that historically, based on all of this research that the actors have done, that our production team has done, this is not only a new portrayal of these characters, but it's also a historically accurate one that is based on a lot of research. And that makes replying to these comments pretty swift and pretty simple, because you can just say, oh, these are the reasons why we're doing it like this, and this is the evidence that can back it up. Just like a argumentative, a simple argumentative essay. And they don't know what to say about that, so they just
Right.
So
Well, let's talk about the historical evidence here. Obviously a lot of people will try to say, well, historically this, and at the end of the day, they're talking about misconceptions, and people like us tend to do a little bit more research into, oh, well, I'm going to be playing, you know, the daughter of the first Earl of Crichton, you know, for example, and you do a deep dive on that. So obviously you guys have a lot more to speak about. But we're going to address the elephant in the room really quick, of course. King James was a king at a time of a lot of change and a lot of very specific social change, you know, the Protestant Reformation. He was, of course, the first king that unified England and Scotland, and was a notorious witch hunter, obviously. But let's talk about all of it. Let's talk about King James in general, you know. He he was queer by all accounts, and you guys have all of the receipts on that.
We
So
do. And I have to say that, you know, I'm a history nerd. This is my passion. Of course, I've done a deep dive. And also, this isn't my notion that I came up with. You know, I didn't
Right,
just
this isn't an agenda. It's
not fan
but it's not.
right. And I didn't just like read a letter and misunderstand something, right? If you read the latest biographies of King James, they're very clear about this. You can find innumerable articles about this online, you know, and I think that people who have questions should feel free to do their own research as it goes. But the latest biography, The Wisest Fool, which came out just a year ago, does talk about his scholarship. So King James was probably emotionally most close to his tutors, right? Because he, keep in mind, was definitely not raised by his mother. His aunt would not have ever allowed that. His aunt being Queen Elizabeth, right? And he certainly wasn't raised by Queen Elizabeth either. So the people who were raising him up and teaching him how to be a person were his tutors. So he had a lifelong passion for learning. He was very interested in scholarly debate. And there was actually a tradition of this going back to Henry VII, really. But, you know, Catherine of Aragon carried on this tradition. And in their own ways, Mary and Elizabeth encouraged or discouraged this. And then James, a man of learning. He considered himself a scholar and he was a man of learning. I'm an amateur scholar, right? So I'm going to trust the historians who are coming out and saying things like, nope, this is not a misunderstanding. This is absolutely the way it was. And it's time to finally acknowledge that. And one of the really interesting things is some of the archaeological evidence that's come to light at one of their summer homes, one of their summer castles. They actually discovered a passageway that connected the bedrooms of the king and the Duke of Buckingham. So saying that they were just roommates might be,
just saying, I just want to see. I want a secret passageway just in general, like.
So, and I will say, like, the secret passageway makes it sound more like they were hiding it than is the reality, right? Like, because they weren't. King James, had a long list of well-documented lovers, of male lovers. So first being his cousin, Esme Stewart, who was really a problematic relationship because Esme really groomed James from a young age. So I could go on about this for a long time, but I will try to keep it short. Essentially, there was a sect within the Scottish government that did not want Mary to raise Mary, Queen of Scots, to raise James. So they killed his father, removed her from the throne, and he was crowned king at, I think, 13 months, just over a year old, to the throne of Scotland. And they raised him in a way that was very much like, you rule by the right of the people. Your bloodline is, your bloodline does not guarantee you anything. You only are the king because we let you be the king, that kind of stuff. Which is in opposition to, of course, Mary, Queen of Scots, being a very not violent, but very regal, like, I have the right of God to rule my people. Well, Esme Stewart, being his cousin, came in, taught him the exact opposite, which fascinated James. And Esme, I think, was 30 or something at the time. James was, I think, a teenager. And he kind of groomed him and became one of his first lovers. And then there were a couple of more in there. The other notable one being Robert Carr, the Earl of Somerset. who ended up being just like a miserable person, and none of the court liked him, which is how we got to George Villiers. In fact, there was a group of people that conspired to get George Villiers in front of the king by making him a cupbearer. Notable in this list of conspirators is Francis Bacon, George Villiers' mother, Mary, who has her own rag to riches story, and I definitely encourage you. She is, I think, one of the most powerful and like just one of the most powerful and strong women I think I've read about in history in general. She like really took no nonsense from anyone, and she took a lot of steps to make sure that her children would have a better life than she had. So I encourage you to go look up and do your research about Mary Villiers. She was a force, but she was a part of the conspirators, as well as was Queen Anne, who was James's queen. So James had a queen, Queen Anne of Denmark, and she was extremely supportive of all of his lover relationships. So Queen Anne also was in this group of conspirators, getting George in front of the king, and then deposing Robert Carr as his favorite.
And Anne was historically an extremely tolerant person. We didn't portray her this year because we really wanted to focus on establishing this relationship. But because she wouldn't actively persecute Catholics, she was known as a Catholic sympathizer. And, oh, you know, maybe she's secretly a Catholic. And she was just a very tolerant, middle of the road type of person. And that's a huge factor or a huge function of the culture that she was raised in, because keep in mind that Denmark and all of those countries were just pretty historically tolerant and peaceful and live and let live sort of attitude.
Yeah, she was awesome. She so the point of this being, we would at this point probably, if they had our modern words to describe their relationships, we would probably describe James as some sort of bisexual or demisexual polyamorous individual, because he did also love his wife, Queen Anne, while he had these loving relationships with men as well.
And pardon me if I just
yeah.
Very publicly, right?
Very
in front of Parliament and said, I love this man, right?
Yes.
This wasn't a secret. This wasn't just in his hidden letters. It was very public.
Yeah, his quote is, you can be sure that I love the Duke of Buckingham. I love him more than any of you who are here assembled, because he and Parliament did not get along, actually, famously. And then he is quoted as saying, Jesus Christ had his John, I have my George. So they were very public. So it was a conversation we had pretty early on about what what we were going to refer to him as, and I was rather adamant about declaring that he was queer. Queer being an umbrella term to me. I often describe myself as queer, and because we can't dig him up, resurrect him, and ask him, "Hey, dude, what do you like? What would you prefer to be called?" And I think that's really important, right? Because we can't do that, I think queer is the most respectful thing that we can call him. He shared letters between George. He had letters rather between himself and George, talking about how when he sent his son Charles and George to go get the Spanish Infanta to marry his son, Prince Charles, he wrote them a letter asking them to return home because he missed them so dearly. And called George his dear child and wife. Please return to your loving father and husband. So it's again, there is so much historical evidence. It is not just one letter. It is a slew of letters plus personal accounts that led to this being the historical representation.
Yeah. But to drive back to the original point that I think you were trying to make, yes, there's problematic things about James, as there are about every monarch that's portrayed at a Renaissance fair. And almost every person throughout history. People are complicated, but it is also a festival. So we're trying to celebrate the joyous aspects. And, you know, if we need to talk about the problematic things, we talk about them. We're not going to ignore them, but we just want to focus on the celebration and the happy things. One of those happy opinion.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. Yes.
I mean,
I think
a little more Disney, a little less, you know, what was it?
little less
Cinderella, her stepsisters putting them in cinder blocks, like little less of that.
Right.
Something that I like to say, because again, like, you know, we've been doing Ren fairs for a while now. We like to play in the Renaissance, not live in the Renaissance.
Yes.
Because the Renaissance was super bad to a lot of people. And that does not sound like a fun place to create joy and art. You know, so yes, King James was the witch hunting king. He was very terrified of witchcraft. And a lot of people, mostly women, the poor, people of color, all suffered under that. And like, there's definitely a space for that to be the discussion. I personally am just not sure that that space is at the fair where we're trying to make merry. That's definitely a thing that needs to be talked about for sure. But the point of this is, of course, to bring people joy and to make people have a great time. You know, a lot of fairs are Queen Elizabeth fairs or King Henry fairs. And we don't talk about Queen Elizabeth having Francis Walsingham execute Catholics all over the country. That's not fun. We don't talk about that. We don't talk about her beheading people constantly. We don't talk about King Henry having killed multiples of his wives. We usually, if we're going to portray a love story with King Henry, it's going to be King Henry and Catherine of Aragon because they were married for such a long time and were genuinely in love. And so we do the Disneyfication of it, because if you don't, it just gets sad, honestly. So, but that's kind of my take on it. Is yeah, that was a thing, but we're gonna gently push that to the side, and then things like this are welcome to acknowledge it. That you know, holding these historical figures to our current sensibilities is kind of a moot point.
Yeah, it can be really difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's always fascinating to watch too. I do like seeing how different fairs handle different questions. I know notably right now Muskogee has Robert Dudley in their cast, and that whole relationship, we all know there was talk of maybe he killed his wife, and history is just such a fascinating thing, and I think that's the beauty of the Renaissance Festival is we get to give you a piece of history, so you might be able to research it later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and something that has been the focus of my career in the Renaissance Fair, actually. My focus has always been, I want to give you something for you to hang your hat on that you can relate to, and then I want you to go off and learn about it for yourself. So when I played Mary, the kid sister of Henry VIII, you know, we did the same thing. We focused on the positive. We focused on her story. We didn't focus on the negative, but I did want people to go and look her up and see that the story we were telling was a true story. When I then became an independent actor off of cast at Connecticut, the character that I was most interested in playing was Julie Daubigny, which of course is how we met. And Julie, also a real person, real story. So one of the things that I focused on when I'm portraying Julie is that I would introduce myself as Julie at all times, because I was not interested in promoting Krystal Bly, the actor. I was interested in promoting Julie Daubigny so that people would go and look her up and learn her story. And I feel like that's the same thing that we're trying to do here. Go look up James. If you have a question about how we're portraying him, go find out for yourself.
Yeah, and there are 3 excellent books that I recommend. And I'm gonna now blank on the authors because I've just now had my coffee. But The Wisest Fool is the most recent one. We also have The King's Assassin which is a little bit older, but it's also what the new Star show is based on, Mary and George. That one a little more salacious, but that is the theory that George Villiers actually was King James's assassin, which personally I disagree with. Once you go read that book, I think you would also agree with me. But that is one of the theories, and I can quickly, of course, they're going to blame the homosexual because they didn't like him and wanted him out of the nobility because George was a low noble, and James actually made him a duke and elevated him to nobility, which is a class struggle. And if we know anything about our modern age and us as humans, we don't like it when poor people rise up and attain the same level of class that our wealthy overlords sometimes have. So of course they didn't like him and tried to get rid of him by saying, yes, you killed the king. The other one being King James and the History of Homosexuality, which is another excellent read as well. So.
And I think that harkens back to a lot of what we try to do at the Renaissance Fair versus the portrayal of history that you can get in a TV show like Mary and George, which is that when you have a mini series, you can really dive deep into a bunch of the more sort of provocative elements of these characters, such as Mary being a manipulative mother who was using George and installing him so that she could bring her family back to fortune. And I think when you look at the actual history, George Villiers was a lowly noble, and it was the tiniest bit of noble blood that got him into schooling in France that ended up bringing him back to I think at this time it would be, you were vouching for Great Britain.
Yes.
King James is vouching for Great Britain, and so bring him back to Great Britain to become the cupbearer. But also, whenever George was given military campaigns, some of them were failures, and eventually he was assassinated about 4 years after James passed away because he could no longer protect him by a man named John Felton for a lot of the military failures. It is also said that at James's funeral, George Villiers was sobbing so much that they actually had to pause the proceedings. And I think what's important about that is whenever we're doing an interactive show for an audience where children can come up and talk to us, we have to talk about what we want to emphasize. And a lot of what Krystal was saying was, these are powerful men, proudly in love. And for George, it wanted to feel like what you were saying with Disney, a lot more like a Cinderella story, which is that these are two men who ended up, instead of George Villiers rising in sort of a malicious sort of way, he was rising like a phoenix. And he ended up, he and James came together because they were in love. And that's the face that we want to present to an audience, so that when little kids come up and they say, I want to be a knight of you, your majesty, the king, we can just celebrate that. And it gets to, we get to choose joy in that sense.
Yeah, choosing joy is really important.
Well, and you guys have really already touched on it, all three of you, but just to put an absolute fine point on it, why now? Why is this so important right now? And
it's because it's long overdue.
Mhm.
Honestly, it's this is something that I think should have happened 10 years ago, right? But the stars just lined up for it to happen at this moment. So here we are.
Yeah, I think why not?
Yeah.
It is a celebration that we are the first Renaissance Fair with an openly queer monarch. That is not something that we are bent on holding as a point of interest. We joke about if next year there are 40 Renaissance fairs with queir monarchs.
Hell yeah.
Oh no,
Oh, no,
like
I
I can't believe it.
I think our hope is that others follow in our steps. Someone has to take the first one. And it is us. And I think we're doing a great job. Krystal has been just fantastic about this. It's really, I can't really sing our praises enough as a thank you for doing this for our community. But like I said, why not now? Like Krystal said, why not earlier? And like Cole said, oh no, if we're not the only one after this, sick, dude.
Yeah.
So going forward, we hope that this it is something that we get to celebrate, but it no longer has to be a point of contention, because it's just, oh yes, a lot of monarchs were queer. James isn't the only one, and there's so much in Renaissance Fair history that we could celebrate about that going forward.
Absolutely. And this isn't the only cool thing that we're doing, right? So one of the major focuses of my management and production teams is inclusion, diversity, and representation. We have a stated code of values that we follow, and I hire according to those values, right? So hopefully that you will see it not just in my choice of Monarch, but in the choice of the people that I choose to employ at both of the festivals. And additionally, we are putting in great new, or I should say, we're making new strides towards more diversity, inclusion, and representation. For example, accessibility is a major issue for us. And it is at a lot of Renaissance fairs, right? Renaissance fairs, as I'm sure you know, and much of the audience knows, developed on primitive sites, frequently walking around in the grass. If you're using a mobility device, walking around the grass is not great. So not only do we have gravel walkways at Oregon, we're putting in gravel walkways and stone walkways at Washington as well, which is a primitive site that we are developing from the ground up.
Well,
Right.
and like even this weekend we have the
It's
our
Yeah.
as well. It's just another like, yeah, we're trying our best to like make sure that everyone can enjoy fairs.
Right. This is so the second weekend of each festival is our ASL interpretation weekend. You will see signs at our front gate that say "Speak Friend" and "Enter," because I'm a huge Tolkien nerd as well, right? And we
That's
have
amazing.
coming into interpreter shows. And we have more interpreters on Sunday. And the wonderful thing about that is that we actually still have a few tickets available for Sunday. So if the deaf community happens to get wind of this and you want to come out, please do. We'd love to see you both Saturday and Sunday, but we still have some tickets available for Sunday. And our second weekend of our Washington Festival will also be the same. And pardon me, we've used the terms interchangeably, but it is the Washington Midsummer Renaissance Fair, and it is the Oregon Renaissance Faire with an E.com. So please feel free to go and get tickets and join us for second weekend of both of our festivals.
As many people may or may not know, I am personally also partially disabled. So hearing all these things are wonderful. And I'm just so excited to hear about all of this. But without anything else, apparently that trigger finger is very, very happy to mute me again. Is there anything else we didn't cover that maybe you guys that any of y'all wanna talk about? Whether it's within this particular or, for example, finding out about the ASL information.
I think the last thing I would say is just like queer people have always been here. Always and ever. And history is a really cool place to find yourself. And so I would say to like maybe those who are like, I didn't actually know that, because I've now having planned this for like several months now, having like talked to other people at other fairs, and they'll be like, oh, what are you doing next? And I'll be like, well, I'm actually going to Oregon to play King James, and we're going to do it gay. And they're like, I didn't know he was gay. And so I would just encourage you to continue to be curious, to go about and like look up these people, because they are, I think when you start to research them, they become people, and not Wikipedia articles. And I think you'll be really surprised at what you'll find. So
because one of the things we keep saying is, well, once they find out that we're people, it's all over. Then they like us. Oh no. Yeah.
I would say that two things that I would say. One is that when it comes to art, the universal is found in the individual. And what's great about what Graham and I get to do is they get to have that humanizing moment where when they get to come up to us and speak to us, and we get to reply in a historically informed way, that can illuminate them, and it can help them find out something about themselves. And also, it's not just that we are historical figures at a reenactment site. It is fun, it is a party, it is a blast. If you come up to us and you're in a silly costume, we might give you a quest.
Yeah.
Like you can come to the joust and you can come to the joust and see the king or the duke riding a squire. Everything about it is so full of joy and so full of fun and so full of positivity. And at this fair, there really is something for everybody to just come and hang out and have a good time.
We have a silly, goofy, good time. We really do.
And one last just thing that I gleaned here. So Graham, you have Renaissance Festival background. Krystal, you have Renaissance Festival background. Cole, Is this your first Renaissance Festival?
No, it's not.
Okay.
I've worked at other Renaissance fairs for a couple of years now. That's where Graham and I met, actually. So we
Oh,
worked at
okay. I just
about
wanted
3
to clarify that because I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah, that was actually like what like Cole and I've been doing this. Like Cole's been doing it for I think 4 years, and I've been doing it for, like I said, 5 out of 7 because we got COVID in there. But we know what we're doing, which is one of the reasons Krystal asked us to come do this.
Right. I was interested in hiring professionals.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. She didn't want to have to teach someone how a Renaissance fair works, which was a big boon to our favor. But yeah, we love the Renaissance fair community. It's often very accepting, very open, and it's gaining, I think, now new life, a new breath. They're upping in popularity, with like nerd culture, Dungeons and Dragons, which is helped by Stranger Things. You've got Critical Role and and all of these things are all like in one giant Venn diagram, and Renaissance fairs are in the center.
Yeah.
And so they are gaining popularity. And so, you know, being able to do this at a time when it is growing, is like an excellent choice.
Yeah.
So,
It's really interesting to bring up the overlap with other subcultures, right? And I think that the philosophy that we certainly embody here at this festival, but at many festivals, is sort of Gene Roddenberry's vision of the future, right? Where where it's just
who was
normal.
the first
The
California
founder.
Pleasure Fair, founded by an excellent woman
whose
yeah.
son actually performs at our festival.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, his
That's some trivia for you.
Yeah.
People didn't know that Renaissance fairs were founded by a woman.
Yeah, and
Trivia.
it was started as a fundraiser for
Mhm.
public radio. There's an excellent Smithsonian article about it. But actually, yeah, her son performs at
know
the
that.
festival.
That's sick as
We
hell.
should, I'll take you down the
I would
lane,
love to.
introduce you to Brian.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
It's even more fun trivia when you realize just how many acts have actually been spawned out of Renaissance festivals. But that's other trivia.
Yeah.
yeah, and it sort of comes full circle, right? So at this festival, we have, I should say, at each of my festivals this year, we have an act that was featured on America's Got Talent. So Renaissance Fair went into the popular culture that way, and now, these people were featured on America's Got Talent, and now they've come back to their home starting place. So we have Melissa Arleth of Cirque du Soleil, who is at our Oregon festival, and she's there for the entire run. I should say she and her cats and rats and Vitaly, right? So they
They're
are
so
whole
cool.
act. They're wonderful.
That's so cool.
And 2 of her animals actually have set world records recently. One of her cats and one of her rats, for longest jump by a cat and the most hoops that a rat
Most
can
times jump through a hoop in a minute.
in a minute. Yeah, and it's 12 apparently. So we have some wonderful animal performers as well. And speaking of our animal performers, one of the other things that's really near and dear to our hearts is that we are not just a not-for-profit that's committed to education and history education, but we also have an additional not-for-profit that specifically works with rescue horses that is brand new this year. So all of our joust horses are rescue horses.
Super cool.
So we're committed to, justice and equity and doing good in the world. And one of our performers this weekend has decided to team up with one of their stage mates. So Tara, Supernova, the Strong Woman is her name. And our dance troupe Boxana have decided to do a collaborative show this weekend, and all of the tip money that they collect will actually go to another animal rescue, a pet rescue. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So we are really trying to do good by all creatures at this festival.
Well, thank you guys so much for sitting down with me. It's been such a pleasure, and of course, coming from my own background as someone who's been in the Ren Fair community for years and, is also part of the queer community. This has been really wonderful. And you're absolutely right. Why not? It's about time. We've always been here. Someone with a classics background, I have lots to say about, yes, queer people have always existed. So thank you guys so much.